to the Thought SNOB Podcast. I'm Paula SNOB. Let's get snobby. Welcome to another episode of the Thought SNOB Podcast. I am Paula SNOB, your host, and we've also got my husband Will here. And if you have been watching the podcast for any amount of time, you know that we have switched up the format a little bit. And instead of having long episodes with a guest, these are shorter commentary episodes where I don't know what the topic or the question is until, like right now, spur of the moment, Will just asks me something or gives me a topic to talk about. And I have to talk about it off the top of my head without any preparation whatsoever. So if you've been watching us for a while and you enjoy this new format, please drop a comment. And if you haven't liked and subscribed already, that would be fantastic if you did that. So, all right, Will, what have you got for me today?
This week, I'd like to touch on the vacation we just got back from. And there are so many topics that we could discuss from things we learned on this trip. But I think what I'd like to hear from you today is the difference in setting expectations and when reality affects those expectations, and any other lessons that you learned about yourself from this trip.
There are a lot of things that I can say about that trip. And there are a lot of things that I learned about myself on that trip. And one of those things was expectations and how they incredibly impact your experiences. And I want to backtrack just a second. So a few weeks ago, I'm not exactly sure when this episode aired, but I talked about a trip that I took to Europe in 1999 and what a mess that trip was. And when I recorded that episode, I was operating off of a theory that my mindset in 1999 had terribly interfered with the experiences that I had on that trip. And I absolutely 1000% stand by that. I know for a fact that my mindset manifested a lot of the crazy stuff that happened on that trip. This trip was a whole lot different, but a lot of crazy things happened. And I want to start out by saying there's a huge difference between traveling and vacationing. When you're traveling, you are mobile. When you're vacationing, you are more immobile. You're resting, you're rejuvenating. When you're traveling, you are not resting. Not at all, especially on a trip like we took. And I knew going into it that we didn't have enough time. I knew we were shoving too much in and too short of a period of time. Now that I knew, but I even underestimated the aggressiveness of our travel schedule. Now what that caused is it caused me to do the one thing that I might despise more than anything else in this world, and that is rush. When I have to rush and I can't be present, then the good time is over for me. If rushing is involved in anything, then I've got to say no to it. coming home from that trip, this is why I said when I first started talking about this, coming home from that trip, that's one of the things that I realized about myself is it doesn't matter how fabulous the place is where I'm at. It doesn't matter. If I'm rushing, I'm not having a good time. And if I have to do that for days and days and days on end, then it really starts to mess with my head. It really starts to mess with my mental health in general, really. And all of this ties into expectations. So Will and I went into this trip, and we went with our friends, Sean and Karen. All of us went into this trip, and we had these high expectations for the experiences that we were going to have, because we had shelled out a lot of dough on this trip, and we were going to some pretty fabulous places. We started out in Paris, France, and from Paris we traveled through the French Riviera, and it was fabulous. There were moments of fabulousness. There were moments of just awful moments. There was chaos. There was calm. There was a little bit of everything. The trip was like an emotional roller coaster. But what all four of us did, and I feel safe in speaking for all four of us here, is we set expectations for how this trip was going to be because of the amount of money that we were spending. Well, here's the thing. It doesn't matter how much money you spend. You can't control what other people are going to do. You can't control how other people will behave. And what you consider to be great treatment, the next person has a different perspective about that. So during this trip, we all got slapped in the face a lot because of expectations. And we thought that everything was going to go great because we were taking the 5-star route, and therefore we were like wrapped up in some euphoric version of reality, when the reality was we had no control over trains, and we had no control over staff, and we had no control over anybody that was waiting on us, or at hotels, or whatever, the airlines, whatever.
We also couldn't control our health, and you couldn't control going into the thing at the height of a head cold, and I couldn't control getting a stomach bug on day 2 that lasted for a week. There were a lot of things outside of our control on that trip.
Well, I mean, you just opened up a real big can of worms with that statement. Now, I have talked to a lot of people about how my health has improved so much that I haven't even had a head cold in almost 2 years. And right before this trip, Will, you got sick with a head cold first, and then I caught it. And with me, that's when I'm not a worrier, but that's when I started having those thoughts. Maybe this trip is not such a great idea, because I felt pretty bad. I felt pretty bad. And that got my mindset all messed up for this trip, because I'd switched over from I was excited and thinking about how much I was going to enjoy this trip, and then the head cold stepped in and set me down 4 days before I was to get on an international flight to Paris, and I just felt like shit. And that's all I could think about was, why am I getting this head cold now? Well, while all this was going on with me, our neighbors, and I didn't know this until we got on the trip with them, but our neighbors were kind of having the same thoughts. They were having their own worries about going on the trip because of a situation with one of their dogs. And all of us went into the trip with some kind of little worry, some kind of little something. Should I be taking this trip? And we got so many signs. Like, we got so many signs. Hey, red flag, red flag. You need to be careful, kind of thing. And for somebody like me, it's not that I necessarily ignored it, but because of the rushing, I couldn't be present. I couldn't think. And I just was not able to decipher the meaning of the messages I was getting. Though those signs were telling me to be careful. And I really can't say that I was, because I was having to beat to a drum. I was having to get up, get ready, be somewhere on time. I mean, we had tickets to this and tickets to that, and reservations to this and reservations to that. And it was the first time in a long time that I think I went maybe 3 days without meditating, because I did not have fucking time. And I learned so many things about myself on that trip. I will never take another trip like that again. What could have been glamorous and fabulous and romantic and relaxing and fun turned into a hustle and bustle, watch the time clock, constant kind of thing. When you do that, nobody can think straight. Your nervous system, it's on crack. Your nervous system cannot regulate under circumstances like that. And at one point or another, all of us came unglued, all of us. And stupid things started happening. And I know that we attract what we are. Like, I know that. And when I'm in a situation and stupid things start happening, stupid things, um, just things go wrong, nothing's going right, then I'm like, uh-oh, I need to check myself. And I thought that several times on the trip, but I didn't have time to check myself. And that is a big mistake that all of us made. And another huge, huge thing that I didn't necessarily learn about myself, but I was again slapped in the face. I was reminded, and this is one of the first things I learned from Dr. Wayne Dyer. Self-reliance. In any situation that you're in, you need to be informed about what is going on. And I didn't do that. I let Will take the lead with everything. I didn't know what time my flights were leaving. I didn't know where I was supposed to be. I didn't know about the trains in Paris, and that is something. If you take that train, by hell, you better know what you're doing, because it is the most confusing, chaotic thing that I have ever tried to navigate in my entire life. And we were in a situation, me and Will and our two friends, we were boarding the train to leave Paris to go to Nice. And the only thing that we had been warned about was thieves at the train station. Everybody said, you got to watch your luggage. They go through everything. They will steal from you. And so we were on heightened alert about that. But I didn't do any research about this train station and how the trains operated. And it was beyond confusing. I cannot stress how confusing It was, and none of us spoke French, and that was another mistake. But anyway, the day of the train station is when um, the self-reliance lesson came back to me. And Will and our friends were running behind that day at the train station, and Will and I got on our train. They hadn't gotten to the train station yet, and when they got to the train station, several mistakes were made. Will and I were on the right train, but in the wrong cart, and didn't figure that out until 6 minutes before the train was going to take off. We had way too much luggage. That was a total nightmare. This French lady got up in my face and told me that I was unbearable. That didn't really go well. She didn't like the fact that we had so many suitcases. Okay, yeah, we had too many suitcases. Yeah, we sure did. This is another thing. I did not research this, and I know better than to go into situations not knowing what the fuck is going on. And that is on me, 1000%. In the moment, I was aggravated with Will when I found out we were on the wrong cart. But how could I be aggravated with anybody but myself? I've got more degrees than a thermometer, and I am more than capable of figuring things out. But I let someone else take the lead instead of being self-reliant, and I know better than that. So it was the same situation with our friends. When they got to the train station, they were really late. Will and I didn't know what in the hell we were doing, but they were relying on us to tell them where to go. Well, somehow or another, wires got crossed. I don't know if we gave them the wrong information. I don't know, but they got on the wrong damn train. And it caused some major problems for them. So they're supposed to be on a train going to Nice, but they were on a train going to Dijon and did not figure that out until the train was already moving. We didn't figure out they were on the wrong train until it was already moving. And when I figured out they were on the wrong train, I didn't know if I was on the right train. I didn't know where Will was. I was in a complete mess. And I just stood there and started crying. And I thought to myself, why didn't why did I do this? Why didn't I handle my business and do the research and figure this out? Huge lesson learned. Huge lesson. And it goes back to expectations. I just expected for Will to know what was going on because he had been totally hands-on in the planning and I hadn't. That's another mistake I won't make again. But don't expect anything from anybody but yourself. Like ever, because yourself is the only person that you can control. That's it. And self-reliance you can't put a price tag on it. It's like wisdom. No one can take wisdom away from you. No one can take self-reliance away from you. And I learned that lesson on that trip. And I thought to myself, was I sent on this trip to be reminded about all of this? Maybe so. But the trip ended up being something that I would absolutely do again. The French Riviera was incredible. It was beautiful. The weather was perfect. And it was as though, our luck, and I'm saying luck and air quotes if you're listening and not watching me right now. Our luck seemed to have, turned around when we got to the French Riviera. Now, I know that that is no coincidence. I wasn't as rushed. I was able to sit back, collect myself, at least get one meditation in a day, and my nervous system wasn't completely jacked up like it had been in Paris, France. And, Paris, this was my second time in Paris, probably my last. Paris is like Times Square on heroin, in my opinion. It is nonstop hustle and bustle. It's not easy to get around. There's a huge communication barrier. Hey, that's on me. I'm not blaming them. I'm on their turf. I should know the freaking language, and I didn't. That's another thing about self-reliance. But I'll just wrap up by saying, traveling, if you want to really, really get to know yourself, traveling is a great way to do that, because you are thrown curveballs that you can't anticipate, you can't expect. It is a huge act of vulnerability. Just getting on an airplane is a huge act of surrendering and vulnerability, because you have to give up control. And once you step on that plane, once you step on that train, once you check into that hotel, whether it's 5-star or it's microtel, you can't control what the people in charge are going to do. And when you travel, that is one of the best opportunities to learn about yourself, because your reaction to other people's behavior and how they react to things will tell you a lot about yourself. And you can either ignore those lessons, or you can learn from them, and you can grow, and you can develop a keen awareness that the only thing that you are in control of, period, is yourself and your emotions. And when you can learn to control your emotions, then you are 50,000 steps ahead of every other person on this planet. Again, traveling, vacationing, two totally different things. What we did in France was traveling. I was exhausted when I got home, and I didn't do anything for like a week because I was so jet lagged, and I was so run down, and I was so tired, okay? Two totally different things. I thought about that a lot on that trip. And then the self-reliance, I go back and forth with this. I think controlling your emotions is probably your greatest. If you can accomplish that, it might serve you as your greatest asset. But self-reliance is right up there with it. It goes hand in hand. And when you travel like we did, you need to know what's going on. I don't care if you are with a person that you trust wholeheartedly. You need to know what's going on. And I will never go back into another trip or any situation again that I am not informed about what's going on. Even if I'm not in control per se, I am going to be informed. I'm going to know my shit. I'm going to know what's going on. And I'm not going to let anybody else be in charge of that. So, those are my key takeaways with lessons that I learned from our trip to France.
Well said. All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to another episode of the Thought SNOB Podcast with Paula Swope. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also see us on YouTube. We appreciate any likes, comments, ratings, anything you want to leave for us. We'd love to see it. We'll see you next time. The Thought SNOB Podcast with
Paula Swope has been brought to you by Thought SNOB Media in association with Special Purpose Studios. All production, mixing, and sound engineering by me, Will Swope. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please take a few seconds to give us 5 stars and leave a review. See you on the next Thought SNOB Podcast with Paula Swope.